Good evening and welcome to this digitally enabled online meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, held on Monday, April 19th, 2021. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the Deputy Clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. This is a very special night for our community via our first order of business. The pandemic may have delayed what is normally a fine community function, the presentation of the Norm Sterling Citizen of the Year Award, but we have spirit and determination. And that assurance means that tonight we bring forward before Council and our community a more modest but extremely well-deserved award ceremony as part of our Celebrate North Perth platform. Your Council is pleased to act in a more modest way to ensure that our community heroes, and there are so many, that they are recognized through this awards program that really just touches the surface. We want to be sure that people are duly recognized and celebrated. We've put up some bling around the community to recognize National Volunteer Week as well. It is a great honor as mayor to be able to participate in tonight's presentations and to know of the amazing gifts given to our community by so many dedicated, spirited, and community-focused people. As I said, it is National Volunteer Week, and I lead off with my voice in thanking, profoundly thanking all in our community who have given of their time and substance to support the many things that make us a community. I won't share a list of the many wonderful things that come to pass because of volunteers, because I am bound to miss something and some people, and that's just something I don't want to do. I will say that the spirit and efforts of volunteerism are alive and well and building a decent community in North Perth. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. In the spirit of thanking our volunteers, I'd like to call tonight, if I may, a little bit of a surprise perhaps, on each of our councillors to just say a couple of breaths of appreciation for the volunteerism in our community. And I'll do that, asking them to extend their greetings in alphabetical order tonight. If I may, let's start with Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Todd. I just want to express my gratitude for the many of the people and volunteers that I have worked with as part of North Perth Council. I currently sit on the library board, and I'm very grateful for the volunteers who sit on that board with us. And I'm also an active member in our community in general with the Little Agricultural Society. And I very much appreciate the work of those volunteers in the greater community as well. So I just want to, you know, give those short, brief greetings with those areas, making attention to those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andreessen. Councillor Anstead, if you would.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg. Yes, through you, just to echo what Councillor Andreessen has already said, North Perth certainly is a community and a municipality that has a lot of great volunteers. And similar to what you've mentioned earlier, if I start to name them, I'm afraid I'll forget some. but it goes right, all like you mentioned, all the way down from the top, all the way down to various little things that people maybe don't think about and don't get praise for. So I think, and especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic that we've seen, I think volunteerism has really been, again, something that we miss in North Perth, but it's something that I think we're going to get back to. And again, just hoping that all of our volunteers continue all the great work that they have been doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anstett. Councillor Behrens, if you will.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. It just is such a pleasure to recognize every volunteer in our community. Every little bit helps, and I know that sometimes they think it goes unnoticed, but everyone notices, and they especially notice if it's not there. So thank you, everyone, for everything that you do, using your time and talents to make our community a better place. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Behrens. Next is Councillor Duncan.
Like the other councillors have stated, I'd like to thank all the volunteers in our community. We have a great portion of our community reaches out and volunteers in many different capacities. And I'd also like to congratulate the members that are of our community that are here tonight for the Celebrate North Perth Awards, and thank you very much for the people that nominated those individuals.
Thanks, Councillor Duncan. Next is Deputy Mayor Kellum.
Yes, through you, Mayor Kasenberg. All three recipients, very well deserved. Very great volunteers. No doubt, there's a lot that you just can't stop mentioning. I had the opportunity, one of these recipients, to work with this person on a very, very large project, and I tell you, he gave it 100%, and I really enjoyed that time working with him. So once again, congratulations to all three recipients this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Kellum. I was worried you're going to let it all out of the bag there. Thanks. Councillor Johnston is next.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, and what a great way to celebrate all the volunteers that we have. And it's not just all the committees that are related to council, but all the service clubs, the coaches, the trainers, the soccer coaches, hockey coaches, dance coaches, all those people that volunteer selflessly of their time. And to me, they are the backbone that makes North Perth such a great community. So congratulations and thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Councillor Johnston. Next is Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I would just like to start out by saying that our municipality is made up of streets and buildings and all of the different things of any amenities that come together to make a town, municipality that we currently have for everyone that's involved. However, it's the community and the volunteers that make it a home for all of us. And I would certainly like to extend heartfelt thanks for all of our volunteers, whether it be service clubs, our recipients of the awards that we have tonight, any volunteers that we happen to have that do anything of their own free will and accord. I would like to extend heartfelt thanks for them, because without those folks, even though we would have a municipality, we certainly wouldn't have a place that we're all proud to say home. And North Perth is a better place with all of our volunteers that we currently have in place. And kudos to you. We're all the better for it. So thank you so much to everyone and the recipients that we have this evening. Well, kudos to you as well. Well earned, well deserved, but everyone deserves a pat in the back, because it makes North Perth a good place to live. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Rothwell next.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thank you to all our community volunteers. As Councillor Richardson said, it's about the people, and it's people serving people in selfless ways that makes us even better. So whether it's agriculture, sports, schools, arts and culture, service clubs, our faith communities, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. And Councillor Seiler.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. And
Cheray, we're not hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, very good words said from my colleagues. Recipients, congratulations. It's a very honor to have you win these awards. I know we had trouble trying to make this come together the right way, but it's all working out very well. Yes, I can't say enough from the bottom of my heart for the volunteers in the past and the volunteers that are present now to make a better place for North Perth to live in. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Seiler, and Council, thank you for your heartfelt expressions of appreciation for volunteerism. We're going to begin with our presentation of the inaugural Celebrate North Perth Inspiration Awards. Know that when the current shutdown restrictions are removed, we will take some further actions to recognize our winners, including presentation of certificates, small gifts, and opportunities to be recognized in their preferred locations. First, I want to tell you a little bit about the Celebrate North Perth Inspiration Award. This award is a new award. This is the first time that we've extended this award. It is part of the Celebrate North Perth initiative, our revamped community awards program. Each Celebrate North Perth Inspiration Award recognizes an individual who inspires others through their outstanding accomplishment or service to the community within the preceding year. And we received nominations from the community for those who are considered for this award. Tonight, based on the nominations that were received, we are pleased to announce two winners for this new award. And first, it's my pleasure to introduce the first recipient, Ms. Andrea Cheray. At this time, the clerk is bringing forward the right slide on the screen here. I'm going to read a little bit of information about the basis on which Andrea's service to our community has benefited so many. Andrea puts more than her heart and soul into our community. Her passion for helping people runs deep. She gives up her personal time and funds to meet people's needs. It Takes a Village, set up by Ms. A, is the most recent venue for this compassion. She got things rolling, gathers, trains, and supports volunteers, spends hours sorting donations, takes people to appointments, talks with them, and always listens, guides, understands, and uplifts. It's not necessarily the quantity of the time, it's the quality. Andrea gives and gives in so many ways to meet physical, emotional, and mental needs of our homeless and marginalized. While not actually happening in the 2020 eligibility period for this award, it is noted that Andrea collaborated with Sergeant Manny Coelho of the OPP to raise significant dollars to support local initiatives aimed at alleviating the experiences of homeless in our community. Andrea not only set up and keeps the village going, she has gone back to school to further her education in the social work field in order to be able to help people more. It is my great privilege to award one of the two inaugural Celebrate North Perth Inspiration Awards to Ms. Andrea Cheray. I suppose this is where the clapping normally happens, so I'll clap. Some of you will hear this. Thank you very much. At this time, I'll call on Ms. Cheray if you'd like to take the opportunity to share some brief remarks with your community on this award. You are welcome to do so.
So I just first have to ask if you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, because I can't see many of you. I can only see a few faces, so I think I'm in a bad area. Those are incredibly humbling words. I am so honored to, I'm so honored that even just one person felt compelled to come forward and bring that information to you. And it's interesting because one of my favorite quotes in life is by Mother Teresa of all people, but Mother Teresa said, when your passion, when your calling meets the needs of the people, then you have found your passion. And so the common theme that I'm hearing amongst the councillors and amongst also, you know, what I've heard of the people who I sit at the table with who are winning these awards is that everyone feels passion for the community. And that motivator can make amazing changes, because we are not here forever. And some days we can lead, and some days it's necessary for us to follow. So to the other people who are winning these awards, I am profoundly honored to be in such amazing company, and for you to lead the community. You know, it's just great to get that recognition. So for anyone else who thinks about trying something and second guesses themselves, go for it. Make a change. That's what we're here to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Your council appreciates, again, your service to our community and your warm words. Much appreciated. At this time, I'm going to call on Deputy Mayor Kellum to present the second Celebrate North Perth Inspiration Award. Deputy Mayor, please.
Why, thank you, Mayor Todd. I'll start off by saying this is a pleasure for me to read this next nomination letter as well. Elizabeth Johnson is recognized for her valued and respected leadership of the Listowel Agricultural Society during 2020. Last year was one great uncertainty, and there was an unprecedented need to adapt to the restrictions that the COVID pandemic put on the lives of the individuals and the organizations in our community. The work of the Listowel Agricultural Society was not exempt, but under the guidance of a very dedicated and competent president, Elizabeth Johnson, the group remained optimistic and persevered. Many of their usual events were either altered or cancelled, including two major events, the fair and the harvest auction. These events not only provide the financial support for the work of the organization and the upkeep of the grounds and buildings, but they bring our citizens together to celebrate agricultural and the wonderful community we call home. Collaborating with others, Elizabeth helped design and execute events that looked different. Meetings were held virtually, and the vendor and craft show was held outdoors. Even though the fair was canceled, many posts were made on social media to make sure everyone remembered what the Listowel Fair has been in the past and to keep everyone looking forward to the 2021 fair. Elizabeth guided the group while they organized some new events too. A fireworks show was hosted with Royal LePage, Don Hamilton Real Estate Brokerage in early September. A farmer's toolbox of mental health resources was launched. And perhaps the most ambitious projects were the drive-through roast beef supper in October and the turkey supper in November. Almost 2,000 meals were efficiently saved and served between these events. Throughout the year, Elizabeth kept the Ag Society members informed through many emails and inspired us with her words. One email particularly was very encouraging, saying, "We are a strong agricultural society, and even though things haven't happened as we thought they would, and things won't look what they had planned, we'll figure things out, as we are very, very good at doing that. Working as a group, deciding what's best for the Ag Society and our community, and supporting each other as we go forward." Through her positive attitude and strong work ethic, Elizabeth is inspiring volunteerism, agricultural savvy, and community connectives across every age span. She has been a tireless leader for many years for the benefit of the community she grew up in, through not only the Agricultural Society, but also junior farmers, 4-H, and other agricultural organizations. It's a great privilege to award one of the two inaugural Celebrate North Perth Inspiration Awards to Elizabeth Johnson. Okay, Elizabeth, at this time, I will invite you to make brief comments if you so wish. The stage is yours.
Thank you, and I hope everyone can hear me as well. I just want to thank North Perth Council and as well as my nominators for this award. I know when Mayor Kasenberg called me last week, I was quite excited. I was also quite taken back and quite humbled by this award, and I do really appreciate it. I've been a director with the Agriculture Society for the last 18 years, and it really has flown by. As Andrea said, passion is what drives a lot of us to volunteer, and the Agriculture Society is no different. Our directors, they're very passionate, they're very driven, they're very proud of their community and the agriculture industry that we have here, and they also like to have a lot of fun, and that's what really makes it worthwhile, and makes it that everyone wants to volunteer and be a part of the community even more so. As was said, I've lived here my entire life, other than the 4 years that I was away for school, and albeit it was in Guelph, so I wasn't too far from home. But I did make the choice to come back here because this is home, and whenever I travel, whether for conferences and for work and all that, it's always great to be able to come back home. But when I'm away, it's also great to be able to talk about my community and the great things that happen here, and be very proud of this community. And I'm very proud to be a part of the Agriculture Society. This year, we're celebrating our 165th anniversary. And it's also humbling to know that as president, I've had a great number of people come before me that have done a tremendous amount of work within this community to make our Agriculture Society what it is today, and to make sure that our organization continues to be a contributing organization within this community. So once again, I'd just like to thank each of you, and I look forward to being a part of this community for a number of years to come. Thank you.
Why, thank you, Elizabeth. Again, congratulations and very well deserved.
Thank you.
I'll now turn it back to you, Mayor Todd.
Thanks, Doug. And now I have the distinct pleasure of rolling out what normally is so secret that historically we've kept the awardee out of the loop until the very moment of the announcement. I will concede that with pandemic times, we've had to change our processes, so our awardee didn't need to be told any half-truths to get him to be here with us tonight. First, let me tell you about the Norm Sterling Award. For over 40 years, with roots in Wallace Township, the Norm Sterling Citizen of the Year Award has been given to residents who have made significant contributions to the welfare and betterment of our community. The award was established in honor of Norm Sterling. Norm was a forestry foreman with Ontario Hydro, who put forth great effort to save farmland when the Hydroline corridor was being proposed. Norm was one of the heroes of the Listowel Memorial Arena collapse in 1959. In the split second that the roof was falling in, Coach Sterling grabbed and carried 2 players to the ice and took cover at the north side boards. All 3 survived. In 1966, Mr. Sterling was awarded the President's Medal by the National Safety Council for saving a man's life who was overcome by carbon monoxide. Norm also served on the school board in the town of Listowel and was chairman of the Listowel Memorial Hospital Board at the time of his death in 1973 at the age of 46. Wallace Township set up a memorial award in his honor. The tradition of the annual awarding of an outstanding resident for their achievements and contributions has been carried on in North Perth since amalgamation in 1998. Our 2020 Norm Sterling Citizen of the Year Award is given to Mr. John Verwey. John Verwey started his professional life in Listowel in the late 1970s with Spinrite Inc. LP. He has been a proud member of this community for 45 years. He has always shown how appreciative he is of all who live and work here by participating in a range of community groups and clubs. Even before moving his family here in the early 1980s, John became part of the community with his involvement with the Listowel Kinsman Club. That involvement has continued with the K40 organization. The club was extremely involved in the development of parks and recreation infrastructure, much of which they have helped maintain. And we still have today a pool, parks, sports fields, ice resurfacers, and more, supported by the local kin organizations. Over the years, John filled the roles of president and Paddy Fest chair within the club, and he is still selling Paddy Fest draw tickets each year, at least sold full. John was often at the arena as parent, spectator, and or coach. This was very much a community hub for him and his family. Many a good friend was made at the arena or on the way to another arena. With John's involvement with community events and sports, he was asked to sit on the municipality's Recreation Advisory Committee, which he did for many years. More than 10 years ago, North Perth Council determined that Listowel Memorial Arena needed to be replaced. For this purpose, Council created a Recreation Complex Committee to work with them to plan, develop, and implement all aspects of building and funding a new arena. The Recreation Complex Committee was an umbrella to other committees that focused on design, fundraising, and the actual build. John was asked by North Perth Council to chair the Recreation Complex Committee, and apparently not knowing when to duck, he willingly did, to a successful outcome that the North Perth community is extremely proud of. John is dedicated to his family, his friends, employer, and community. He is a matter-of-fact and unassuming person who has given generously of his time for the betterment of North Perth for us and future generations. He always has a minute to talk or to hear a concern. It is my profound honor and pleasure to present the 2020 Norm Sterling Citizen of the Year Award to John Verwey. And now, John, you've heard all that. I'd like to invite you to take your opportunity to share a few brief remarks with your community on this recognition.
Thank you, Mayor Kassenberg. I'm still shocked. It's been a week and I'm still shocked. I must tell you, though, I've been so very privileged to have worked and served with so many dedicated volunteers, whether it be on boards, be on service clubs, various committees. They've all been fantastic. I mean, there's some great volunteers in this area. What I always found very interesting and very gratifying was not only getting the job done, but all the memories and all the friendships that developed from servicing or from being part of those groups. It was truly great. I'd also like to, though, thank council for providing me the opportunity to serve on local boards. I tend to go way back. I originally started with Listowel Parks Board, which then became amalgamated, became RAC, and then, as Mayor Todd has mentioned, actually chaired at the same time the Recreational Complex Committee. That was a great learning experience. It was a great committee. There was a great group of volunteers. It took a lot of years to make it happen, but I'll tell you the end result we were and still are very, very proud of. I still remember and think of it often, a comment that Councillor Behrens had said to me the day of the grand opening. And she'll remember this. I think somebody come up to her either that day or shortly before the grand opening and had mentioned that we in North Perth, we have a gem here that is the envy of other areas. And it sure is. I really do believe that. I really think that, you know what, we really have something special here. I only hope that with my efforts I've been able to hopefully polish that gem a little bit and added something to it. But again, it's all of us. It's the volunteers. It's you as members of council. It's everybody that gives their all for this community. In closing, I'd just like to thank you very much for this honor. You know, again, this is a great community. I know I've taken a bit of a lapse the past year or so as far as volunteering for various things, but I intend on coming back, and hopefully we can figure out the next big project to make North Perth a better community. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for the honor. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Again, your council expresses appreciation to all three of our award recipients tonight. We also express our appreciation, as you've heard, for all of those who are volunteering in this community and who create an environment that makes it easy for this mayor to say that he is North Perth proud. Thank you for joining us tonight. As I said, for the award recipients, there's a little bit more that will follow as soon as certain restrictions are eased, and we look forward to a little bit more interaction with you in the coming days. Again, our appreciation. There's no longer any reason for you to remain with us unless you're just really curious, but thank you for joining us tonight on this web conference. Okay, well, in case you haven't noticed it, it's a good night to be at council. It's a fine night to be mayor. I have to admit, this is one of the great pleasures of my year. And so, thank you for this opportunity to all. We are being carried live. We have been carried live for half an hour now on YouTube. And after this meeting, an archive of this video will be there for those to review. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and of course their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream and of the archive. Chair and clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed valid. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you for that. Welcome to those who are joining via the YouTube channels. Maybe it's more appropriate to say welcome if you're staying on with us. Maybe that's the right terminology. Welcome to council staff and delegations who participate in the balance of the meeting. At this time, your decorum is requested. Let's move to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Let's begin with Councillor Anstead.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. This evening, through you, I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on item 5.4.1, the accounts, as my son attends the St. Mary's Daycare, and also on item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor Anstead, and next up is Councillor Behrens.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. This evening, I would like to declare a conflict of pecuniary interest on agenda items 5.4.1, 5.6.3, and 13.1. As everyone knows, I have grandchildren attending various daycares and after-school programs within the municipality of North Perth, and as well, my son is employed at Barron's Metal Fabricating. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Behrens. Next up is Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Through you, I would also like to declare pecuniary interest on item 5.4.1, the accounts. Starting off with Perth Metals, as my mother and father-in-law are tenants there. And then with the daycare accounts, as my grandson has just recently started daycare there. And then moving on to 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Hey, that's new. And Councillor Johnston, I'm advised tonight, has a declaration to make.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I'd like to declare on item 5.6.1 the Burnett Municipal Drain, as I'm an officer of a corporation that is in fact affected by that drain, and subsequently also 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw.
Thanks, Councillor Johnston. Any other councillors wishing to make a declaration at this point in time? Okay, we're not seeing any, so we're going to move on. Then our virtual process explanation. As usual, I'll be systematically trying to seek consent from various councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions. and bylaws that will be put before us tonight. I'll do this to some degree alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move to the next name on the alphabetical list. It's sort of part of my challenge as mayor to try to remember who declared pecuniary interest and make sure I don't snag you in my efforts. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining a speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental without intervention from me. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have a second say will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the list. This is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors are reminded that if I believe you're not audible, I'll let you know. We ask you to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I have called upon you for a verbal reaction should I need to. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, I will call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. Hopefully you know the process. Take yourself off mute, answer yes or no, and then return to mute. That brings us to item 2 of our agenda tonight. I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda, which reads as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Let's start with Deputy Mayor Kellum. Would you serve as our mover for that one?
Yes, I will make that motion, Mayor Todd.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our seconder?
I certainly would second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you. Let's move on then to item 3, our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require council's recognition and action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, or individual action may do so. There are 4 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? Please indicate through the chat function. Okay, we're not seeing any response to that invitation, so I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows, that consent items 3.1 to 3.4 be received for information and the minutes of the April 12th, 2021 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call on Councillor Richardson to be our mover for that?
I would gladly move that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rothwell, will you second that one?
I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you, Council. At this time, then, it's proposed that we move on to agenda item number 4. Our agenda tonight includes an opportunity to hear from Mr. Justin Diaz, the Manager of Economic Development for the County of Perth. He's going to update us on the efforts and plans of the Economic Development Department of Perth County in the recent past and for 2021, with obvious emphasis on action supporting survival through and recovery from the pandemic. I get to hear from Mr. Diaz more than most of council, but I'm delighted to welcome him to our table tonight. Welcome, Justin.
Good evening, through your worship. I'm hoping everyone can hear me. Excellent, great. Thank you very much.
We got you, yeah.
Go ahead and share my screen. Bear with me a quick second here. Excellent. I'm hoping you're seeing the front page of the PowerPoint. No.
It looks like Clerk Bearfeld says she's made you presenter now.
Okay, perfect.
Let's see. There we go. It's coming in. Go ahead, Justin.
Excellent, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not used to WebEx as much as I am to Zoom, but hopefully this will work. So again, thank you, Your Worship and members of council, for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. Really, my intent this evening is to share a bit, as Mayor Kaysenberg had mentioned, about the work that the County Economic Development Tourism Division has been undertaking on behalf of North Perth and the businesses across the county to support them throughout the pandemic. Share a bit about some of the things that we've accomplished over 2020 and the early part of 2021, as well as highlight some of the upcoming programs and services that you'll see being rolled out over the next number of months as we continue to support businesses throughout the pandemic. So this next slide just showcases the various buckets that the Economic Development Tourism Department encompasses. By all means, this is not an inclusive slide. There's many other things that Economic Development Tourism is involved in, but these are just kind of some of the high-level service areas that we provide, including business retention, expansion, marketing, promotion, all the way to community transit, corporate communication. So our division continues to support businesses across these multiple service areas. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the team that I'm representing here tonight. So obviously our permanent manager of economic development and tourism, Meredith Forget, who's on maternity leave, our economic development communications officer, tourism officer, and transit service coordinator. Really the work that I do and get to do is driven by these fine individuals who help do that. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout out. So kind of casting your mind back a bit to 2020, just wanted to highlight kind of our goals around 2020 and continue to be around supporting businesses throughout the pandemic. Was really to maintain attachment to the community and business community for a number of different, under a number of different key areas. So survey and data gathering. So data supports our advocacy, the program development, our COVID response. Everything we did was driven by the needs of what we heard from our business community. So we were ensuring that we were hearing from business community regularly and responding in kind, providing resources to businesses. So this is involved with sharing information with our business community, continuing to be, continuing to make sure that they know the most relevant and important information that's relevant to their business in terms of funding and otherwise. Marketing campaigns, so supporting businesses through the various stages of lockdown, restrictions, reopening, and shutdowns. Focus here on the marketing campaigns is primarily to drive local spending, shop local campaigns. We know that as spending is migrated online with many people working from home and stuck at home, it's been ever more important ever more important to make sure that we're continuing to drive that shop local message and providing creative and interesting campaigns to help encourage our residents to do so. Training, so both through the county and in partnership with our local business support centers, we provided and continue to provide training to businesses, primarily in the areas of helping them get online, stay online, sell online. Right now our Digital Main Street program, which I'll talk a bit about, Digital Service Squad is a really important asset that we have over the next number of months and have had to help businesses get online, stay online, and as I mentioned, sell online in these times where they're having to adapt. Business outreach. So this is complementing our surveys, getting the stories behind the businesses. So this involves our work with the various community committees, economic development committees, BIAs, and so forth. And then connecting businesses with funding sources. So obviously, probably one of the most important roles that we have at this time is helping to connect businesses with the available funding sources that are out there. So whether that be the Stratford Tourism Alteration Project administered by the Invest Stratford, whether it be the Main Street Ontario grants, Ontario Small Business Support grants, the Regional Tourism for Tourism Adaptation and Technology grants, as well as digital transformation grants that were offered through our Digital Service Squad provider. Really, we've done our best to try to ensure that businesses were taking advantage of all the available support that's out there and ensuring that they had all the information they needed to successfully apply and walk them through the process where needed. As well as, while the county did not provide any funding support of our own to businesses directly in that way, we did ensure that whenever possible, when we were providing marketing campaigns or purchasing things for any of our various programs, that we were using local suppliers and keeping as much of that money in the local economy to provide that funding to businesses in that way, as well as some of the PPE kits and other reopening recovery kits that we delivered really providing businesses with an opportunity to offset some of their costs by providing PPE, hand sanitizer, masks, and that kind of thing to help them just remove that one burden, that small burden in terms of costs they were incurring as a result of the pandemic. So I've included some examples of the various resources and initiatives that we delivered over 2020 and into the early part of 2021. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these programs. You've either seen them in our social media, may have seen them on our website, or through various presentations may have been privy to at BIAs or economic development meetings. Again, a few other, some of the marketing and outreach campaigns we've run over the last number of months. Again, hopefully these are things that you've been involved in, maybe you have a chance to participate in and share within your community. And then as well, just sharing a few more marketing campaigns. So I might just pause on this slide a bit to share a bit more details on a couple of these programs that were especially impactful, I think. So one example of one of the programs we ran at the end of last summer was our Traveling Deal Wheel. This was an opportunity for, it was actually nominated for an EDCO award provincially. It was an opportunity to share some fun and inject some fun into the business community last year at the end of the summer when businesses were open, but unable to really, provide maybe some of the promotions they normally would have been able to offer after a hard spring and early part of the summer. So this deal wheel gave anybody who came to a store where the deal wheel was on any given day an opportunity to spin the wheel, win a prize, whether it be a piece of swag or a gift card to another Perth County or North Perth business. And one of the things we really heard from this initiative was that it really was a catalyst for some follow-up spending. So we heard from some businesses who said they'd had somebody who came in who won a gift card through one of our deal wheel prize spins, and really it had brought them back to Perth County, brought them back into North Perth, and been the catalyst for a full day of spending. So just one example of how a fun marketing campaign really does drive economic impact. And then one of our really well-supported campaigns, and one we were especially proud of, was the Take the Pledge campaign. You'll see a picture there in the bottom of the screen. So this was a campaign that we launched and ran just before Christmas. And it encouraged residents to spend 70% of their holiday shopping locally, with a chance to win a local shopping spree. So, just doing some quick math in terms of, the average Canadian spending about $1,100 on holiday purchases, and we had over 566 residents taking the pledge. The economic impact of 566, residents taking that pledge, spending 70% of their $1,100 locally, is an economic impact of over 430,000. So just wanted to pull out those couple examples of how these fun, again, marketing campaigns, promotions really do drive economic impact, really do help to support people keeping their money in the local economy. So kind of casting our eyes back to 2021 and kind of the way forward. Obviously, our 2021 plans are continuing to be impacted by the pandemic and restrictions, but we are confident that we are able to deliver most of our planned programming with innovative and adaptive ways to do so. Just wanted to mention quickly our PC Connect Transit project, which is our community transit service. As you know, the county operates two of those routes, Route A and Route B, and have seen, despite all the openings and closures, a really solid growth in ridership using that service for essential purposes at the current time. Our digital service squad programs, I did mention this a little bit earlier. We were lucky enough to secure a grant to get a digital service squad member exclusively for Perth County, who has been working with businesses across the county to help them do things such as getting their business on a Google My Business account, setting up e-commerce platforms, helping connect them to Digital Main Street Ontario and potentially get a free website developed, as well as accessing digital transformation grants. So we've been really thrilled with the uptake in this program, a real strong presence from North Perth in terms of businesses that uptook on this program, continue to uptake on this program. And we do have this digital service squad member in place for a number of more months. So we do encourage you, if you know a business who's online or struggling to get online or is looking to do more with their online presence, especially during the current shutdown, please do reach out. We can connect you with our digital service squad provider. Our Discover More Flavor program, so our farm gate map is a real hallmark and key program we're rolling out in 2021. Our tourism officer is hard at work to get this program ready for a hopeful launch on local food week, which is, I believe, the first week in June. So you should watch out for the launch of this program and continue to watch your mailbox and our social media for some more details on when that program will be rolling out. And then our tourism adaptation and technology grant programs. This was a partnership program that was delivered with RTO4. They were the funders and they administer this program. We did have a number of businesses from North Perth that were able to access this funding. I believe RTO4 is still just right now working with businesses, doing all their due diligence, getting their agreements in place in order to enable them to receive that funding to do tourism adaptation and technology implementation as a direct result of COVID adaptation. So really a beneficial program for local businesses. So we have a number of programs in 2021 that are focused on workforce, visitor, investment attraction. I'll just say a few words about each of these. Workforce engagement and attraction programs. This is a multifaceted program involved with bringing and keeping workforce and youth in our region. We know that continues to be a challenge both before the pandemic and afterwards. A really interesting component of this project that we were lucky enough to get some RED funding for is development of a housing solutions forum, which will bring a really captivating keynote speaker to our virtual session to share some best practices and innovative ways that other communities have helped address that critical housing component, with we know is a huge part of engagement and attracting youth to the region. Our Perth County Certified Experience Programs. This is based on the fact that ongoing research indicates that experiences are really what people are looking for, especially given the pandemic. We're seeing a shift away from mass tourist attractions, big ticket items, CN Towers, crowds, towards more of that organic, experiential, get your hands dirty kind of tourism experience. So this Perth County Certified Experience Program will help local businesses develop and expand and really hone their experiential tourism chops through a series of workshops, development of some marquee signature experiences, as well as toolkits for other local businesses to really boost their experiential tourism profile. Kind of building on that, again, that was supported by a RED grant as well. Building on that is our hyperlocal tourism focus. So everything that we're going to be doing in 2021 is going to be really focused on local tourism, hyperlocal tourism, exploring your own backyard, local regions when that's safe to do so in terms of drawing those folks in. Our tourism brochure, again, will have a distinctly hyperlocal discover your backyard flair to it, as well as some other programs that will be announcing in the next few weeks in regards to cycle tourism and other ways that people can explore and patronize local tourism assets within North Perth and Perth County. Our Perth County Community Improvement Plans, this is a project we've applied for RED funding. We've applied for RED funding here to hopefully roll out this program. Again, we see a CIP as really being a strong tourism recovery, economic recovery program for Perth County and North Perth. Helping businesses, implement those adaptations that are going to be help them sustain new revenue sources, whether it be, implementing a new ticket window, putting in a new ticket window, expanding a patio. So we really see a strong need and desire for this type of recovery project, and look forward to sharing more information about that at a later date. And then our virtual FDI and business attraction program, continue to meet with businesses and try to attract new employers and new industry to available sites in the county. And then finally, just moving on to a few other areas that we were working on in 2021 under kind of the banner of advocacy, outreach, and community engagement. Our equity, inclusion, anti-racism charter. We just wrapped up our community roundtables that were used to inform the development of this charter. Our survey did actually close last week, and we're now conducting some follow-up interviews with individuals who weren't able to participate either in the survey or roundtable discussions, and look forward to releasing more information, including a draft charter, in the coming weeks. There is information about the full process on our website, www.perthcounty.ca/charter, where you can find some more information about timelines, again, when the draft charter will be available for comment, as well as when it'll come back to County Council for adoption. COVID Business Survey 3.0. So we currently have a survey live in partnership with Invest Stratford. We did launch this before the kind of wave of shutdowns and lockdowns, and decided to keep it open despite the fact that the situation has changed quite a bit. Just providing that opportunity to have, while maybe the statistically significance of it might be compromised by the fact that the situation has changed, it still does provide that open line of communication for businesses to reach out and provide what's going on with them, their feedback, and we'll be able to use that, again, maybe not in the statistical way we might have hoped when we set out, but at least to inform our continued response to COVID and the pandemic. And as well, finally, just continued advocacy for Perth County businesses. So in regards to, the information we'll get from the survey, we did engage with some, accommodation providers earlier on in the year to find out what their challenges were. We were hearing that they were being kind of left, they were kind of falling through the cracks. So we were able to get some positive traction on that through some advocacy with our local MPP, as well as some ministers. So we're happy to see that tourism support being announced by the province recently, but continue to advocate. So we know that there's lots of details still that aren't available yet about that program. So even as recently as last week, we participated at the Tourism Day at Queen's Park, advocating for the quick release of more information about that tourism adaptation grant in particular, which we know is really a lifeline that businesses are waiting to hear more about. So continue to advocate, continue to gather that information through our surveys, and to really make sure we're sharing that message with our provincial and our county and provincial representatives. So that concludes my presentation. Again, just really appreciate the opportunity to share with North Perth Council the work that we're doing, and would welcome any questions through the mirror. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Diaz. Council, any questions? Light feedback? We're not seeing anything in our chat window. I think that means that you've done a stellar job, and we want to express our appreciation to Mr. Diaz and team. We know how much effort you've put in, and how much focus your group has had to have in pivoting from usual activities to activities that's helped all survive the pandemic. So we express our gratitude as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so not seeing any questions, we'll move forward then with our meeting. Thanks again. We have no scheduled public meetings on tonight's agenda, which means that we can move on to agenda item number 5, which are reports from departments and key staff. For item 5.1.1, Council is presented with a report and 2 draft documents arising from work in progress by contract staff on our Community Improvement Plan, or CIP. You heard Mr. Diaz reference the CIP. Well, we have one already in the works. I'm going to call on Mr. Lee Barrich, our planner, who has been working on this initiative, to provide this report. Welcome, Mr. Barrich.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and members of council. Staff have developed a facade improvement program and downtown commercial design guidelines to support local business owners in the downtowns of Listowel, Atwood, and Moncton. On December 21st, 2020, staff brought a report to council detailing plans of developing these 2 documents. Since then, staff have undertaken thorough review of best practices and have engaged with business owners in the downtown communities and residents across North Perth. Staff have compiled the results of the engagement process and best practices in order to develop the documents that are currently being submitted for consideration. The Facade Improvement Program will offer financial support to businesses to invest in property improvements. The goal of this is to help create a vibrant and engaging downtown core. The commercial design guidelines will accompany this program and will provide guidance for those businesses in the downtown communities when investing in their properties. And together, these documents are going to be great tools to help drive economic growth in North Perth. Not only is there direct return on investment from these programs, the improvement of the downtown commercial spaces will create a more prosperous and engaging downtown commercial space that will support North Perth's strategic plan and help create an exciting downtown environment that will address our youth attraction and retention strategies. So for this evening, I have two different presentations. The first presentation I'm going to share with you is going to be focusing on our facade improvement program. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss our recommendations and the engagement process that we've undertaken to develop this program. This presentation will provide you with more insight into how this program was developed and how it will benefit the business community in our downtowns. After going through this presentation, I'll then open the floor for questions and comments. And then after this question period, I will move on to our second presentation, which is going to be focusing on our downtown design guidelines. In this presentation, I will be reviewing the community survey that we conducted in January and how this has informed our decision making. And then after these slides, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback. Our recommendation for this evening is that the Council of Municipality of North Perth receives the report, the facade program, the design guidelines for information, and further that any feedback received will be addressed for consideration and approval at the subsequent meeting. And Pat, could you please pull up the facade presentation?
Clerk Bearfeld has indicated that she's made you a presenter. If you'd like to share your screen, I think you're able to do that.
Okay. Okay. So the outline for this presentation is as follows. I will begin by reviewing some before and after pictures of facade projects in the town of Minto. After this, I will review some of the key findings from our business survey that has helped design the details within our program. This will then lead to a discussion of some of our recommendations, particularly those focused on how we will administer this program. And then after reviewing these recommendations, I will finish up by addressing the return on investment from this program, and then we'll open up the floor for comments and questions. So just to review a few before and after pictures, this is in Harriston in Minto from their facade program. This is another project in Harriston and a project from Palmerston. So as you can see, these facade programs can have a really big impact on the quality of buildings in the downtown communities. And now I'll move on to our business survey. So after conducting a review of best practices for facade programs across Ontario, we put together a survey for business owners in the downtown, which we sent out in mid-January. After sending out the survey, I followed up with businesses in the downtowns to explain the purpose of the survey and the goals of the project. We received a lot of great input from business owners who showed a lot of enthusiasm for the program. The results from the survey have done a really great job of reflecting the needs and priorities of our downtown business community. The first question we asked was, in order to understand where business owners saw themselves in the next 5 years. They had 5 options to choose from: remain the same, relocate, close, expand, and renovate. Of these choices, no one selected close or relocate. 46% indicated that they had plans to remain the same, while 12.5% explained that they have plans to expand, and 41.5% indicated that they have plans to renovate in the next 5 years. This information is really valuable because it shows that this program can help meet the objectives of local business owners, particularly those looking to renovate and improve their properties in the near future. It should be noted that within the last few weeks, we've been contacted by property owners in the downtown communities who are keen to begin projects this summer. Facade programs can fund many different types of projects. we asked business owners what sorts of projects they'd be interested in investing in. We provided the following list for them to choose from, and respondents were able to choose as many as they wanted. You will see 3 options highlighted in red. These were the options that were most popular. The options that they could choose from were redesign the storefront, restore the original facade appearance, repaint or clean the facade and those parts of the building visible to pedestrians, replace or repair of windows and doors, replace or repair canopies and awnings, modify entryways, including provisions to improve or provide barrier-free accessibility, replace, install, or repair signage, install street murals or public art along the building's facade, and install flower boxes. Here is a more detailed breakdown of how these responses played out. The top 3 results stand out with 50% or more of respondents selecting them. So those are repair or repaint the facade, repair or replace windows and doors, or replace or install signage. However, there's still significant interest in those projects such as redesigning the storefront, installing flower boxes, and modifying entrances for accessibility. Many of these projects will likely overlap, but it's important to receive these responses so that we can work with businesses as we walk them through the application process, and so we can anticipate the sort of projects that we will have to evaluate and approve. We explained to business owners that the facade program will only provide up to 50% of total project costs, and that they would have to provide the remaining amount. We then asked how much they'd be willing to contribute for such a project. We provided a range from under $5,000 to over $10,000. What we see in this chart is that half of respondents indicated that they'd be willing to provide $5,000 and under for a facade project. This is understandable given the conditions created by COVID-19. However, there is still much that can be done within this budget, such as signage or windows and doors. We see, however, that nearly 30% of respondents indicated that they'd be willing to contribute $10,000 or more for such a project. The result of this suggests that despite the pandemic, the business community is excited for this program. These sorts of projects could potentially have a huge impact on the quality of our downtown, of our downtowns. You'll see 8% of respondents here indicated that they're not interested in participating in this program. One of those respondents was a franchise owner and seemed unwilling and uninterested in the facade program in general. The other business indicated that they supported the program and felt that it would have a positive impact, but they're just not interested in participating at this time. The next question was concerned with how we will administer funds for this program. There are typically 2 different ways to award funds for facade programs. Some municipalities have chosen to go through council approval, and some have chosen to go through committee approval, where the committee is led by municipal staff. After reviewing best practices, we decided it would be a good idea to ask which method the business community would prefer. The most common response was that they are fine with either option, meaning they don't have a preference as to whether it's council or a committee that approves these projects. But the second most common response was that they would prefer a committee to approve these projects with 37.5%. Ultimately, this chart shows that there's a strong lean towards favoring a committee approval for facade programs. Lastly, after speaking with many municipalities, it became very clear that seasonal conditions can have an impact on the facade programs. For example, people may be less willing to participate during the holidays or over the winter months. So we asked business owners which season they'd most likely be willing to make investments into their property, and they were able to select all that applied. As this chart shows, most business owners are interested in making improvements to their properties in the spring and summer, and I will refer to this result later in our presentation when we consider how the projects will be awarded and when. At the end of the survey, we asked business owners to provide any comments or questions. I have included a few here to illustrate the excitement and interest for this program among our business community. This is a timely survey, as I have been researching the history of my building for some time. I have long-term plans of replacing the ugly steel and hopefully being able to restore the building to its original glory. Atwood is in dire need of revitalizing at this time. I would be pleased to see a majority of the funds be allocated to the community. I think this is great that we are going to make Listowel shine again. Thank you for investing in our community. We are growing, and if we do not invest in our downtown and encourage growth like many other small communities, then our downtown will no longer be a viable stronghold for anyone. The community needs a strong downtown core. Before I move on to our program recommendations, I'd just like to go over a few of the key findings from the survey. So there is a key interest among North Perth businesses to improve their storefronts, and this program will help meet that demand. There are many businesses in the downtown who are willing to invest $10,000 or more for a facade project, and these sorts of projects could have a big impact on changing the physical quality of our downtown communities. The program should be set up in order to align with the interests and needs of business owners. So for example, we should ensure that our program is designed to be open for spring and summer months when those businesses are willing to carry out those renovations. And there is a strong preference among business owners to appoint a committee to approve facade projects. So just one thing to consider, one thing that's really important is that there's a strong interest among our business owners to not only improve their own storefronts, but to improve the downtown as a whole. Business owners feel that if the downtown were to improve as a whole, the downtowns would be more engaging and more appealing to shoppers. We should see this program as an opportunity to support the private sector within North Perth and help facilitate the growth and economic activity in our downtowns. And now I'll move on to our recommendations. So we are recommending that for the facade program, council delegate approval authority to a staff-led committee. This is the most efficient way to assess and award projects as shown by best practices research. At the upper tier municipal level, both Elgin and Norfolk County rely on committee approval. At the lower tier level, the town of Minto, town of Hanover, and the township of Wellesley also use a staff-led committee to evaluate projects. Centre Wellington does not have a formal committee, but planning staff approves of all projects rather than taking them to council. At the lower tier level, with the exception of Centre Wellington, facade projects are approved by a committee of 3 people. We recommend that we follow a similar model. This committee will consist of 3 people, a staff member from economic development, the chief building officer or a staff member from the building department, and a council member from the economic development committee, and this person will rotate annually. One of the benefits of this model is that we will be utilizing the expertise of municipal staff. Each project will be unique and will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. For example, if there is a project that may require exemption from a bylaw, the building department's involvement with this committee will ensure that we manage these difficulties and ensure that the application process is smooth and reactive. So I'll briefly walk you through what the approval process will look like. I will be acting as project administrator at this time. In this role, I will be the point of contact for all business owners interested in applying for facade projects. In this role, I will conduct a brief pre-consultation meeting with those business owners interested in applying. At this pre-consultation meeting, I will review the application procedures, the requirements and guidelines in place. Once I receive the application, if it's complete, I will send it to the committee who will then review and approve or reject. If it is rejected, as the project administrator, I will contact the applicants and provide feedback and comments so that they can resubmit if they choose. We feel that this model is most effective for approving projects. It has been very successful in Hanover, Minto, and Wellesley. By the time an applicant submits a project, they are generally ready to begin the renovations. Therefore, it's a good idea to ensure that the application turnaround is quick and effective. Council approval may delay this process as it will take more time and energy to review and award funds. By creating a staff-led committee, we can ensure that staff work closely with applicants in giving them guidance and feedback, and ensure that there's a quick turnaround and that projects will commence in good time. Our second recommendation, the circumstances in North Perth are quite unique compared to other municipalities because we're dealing with 3 different downtown communities. So we feel, therefore, we need to make sure that our resources are being utilized effectively, but that our funds are also being distributed fairly. We feel that the best way to distribute the funding for this program in North Perth is as such: 60% for downtown Listowel, 20% for downtown Atwood, and 20% for downtown Moncton. Right now, there's much more commercial activity in downtown Listowel than there is in Atwood or Moncton. But as the program advances and as the activity in Atwood and Moncton changes over time, there may be a need to change how this funding is managed between the 3 downtowns. We're also recommending that we create 2 different annual intakes. The first intake will be scheduled for February 1st of each year. Applicants can arrange a pre-consultation meeting before this time, but we will not be accepting applications until February 1st. At this time, at February 1st, the funding will be divided according to the 60-20-20 split. However, it's possible that in each downtown community, there may be leftover funds. For example, if there's only 1 project conducted in downtown Moncton during the first intake period, there may be leftover funds. We want to make sure that we are utilizing all this funding. As such, we would like to create a second intake on June 1st. The second intake will allow business owners from all 3 downtown communities to apply for the remaining funding. So if there's remaining funding from downtown Moncton, for example, those businesses in Atwood and Listowel that are still interested to carry out a facade project can then apply. And we feel that this approach will ensure that there's equal access to funding, but that we are utilizing our resources. As of now, North Perth's Community Improvement Plan indicates that we can provide either grants or loans. Our third recommendation is we only offer grants for the facade program. There's a few reasons for this. Under Section 32 of the Planning Act, it indicates that if we provide loans to business owners, we must then put a lien on their property, which is essentially collateral to provide security on that loan. By all accounts, the best practices shows that the process for putting a lien on a property is very costly and counterproductive. In order to do so, there are legal fees that can be quite expensive, and this ends up outweighing the benefits of the loans. Secondly, by putting a lien on a property, it can create problems for business owners. If they wish to refinance or even sell their property, the lien can make this quite difficult for them. One thing we need to remember with this program is that it is designed to support the business community, and the loan process seems to create more problems than solutions. Lastly, there are no municipalities that currently provide loans for their facade program. Many have actually chosen to remove all such language from their programming. In Norfolk County, for example, they offered loans in the first few years of their program and found it to be too troublesome and now only provide grants. So it's our recommendation that we do the same. Last recommendation I'd like to focus on is the public art grant. We are proposing a one-time grant of $1,500 that covers 100% of project costs. This is the same approach used in the town of Hanover, and it's worked quite well. Right now in North Perth, we are currently in the process of reviewing a street mural bylaw. Our bylaw officer, Nicole Alexander, has conducted research on this in the fall and has submitted her findings for review. This bylaw will ensure that all street murals, whether they are on private property or public property, be approved by municipal staff. I'd like to emphasize this because if property owners do apply for this grant, the committee will still have final say on approval. Additionally, within the design guidelines, there is a section in there that is on public art and street murals to ensure that we have some standards in place and to ensure that that public art reflects the values of our community. So if we do advance this recommendation, we have control measures in place to ensure that all street murals are done tastefully and in a manner that reflects the character of North Perth's downtown communities. I'd like to point to a few priority sites in North Perth that I think would benefit from this grant. First, the boarded up windows in downtown Listowel, I think, are a key opportunity for this. But it's also a bit of a problem as it stands. So not only are we not utilizing this downtown space effectively, these properties and the boarded up windows make the downtown look unwelcoming. Long term, we'd like to see these windows replaced or restored and have those properties occupied again. But in our survey with business owners, there were some who noted that they would be willing to invest in those improvements. However, our survey also showed that with COVID, finances may be tight, so such investment may be difficult at this time. So short term, I think public art would help us address this problem. It can be a cost-effective way that can add some color to the main street by building relationships between artists and business owners and support public art that speaks to the qualities of the community and helps engage community members. The same can be said for some of those properties in our downtown communities that have large blank facades. The first image I'd like to focus on the bottom left is of Vecchi's on Main Street in downtown Listowel. I'd like to focus on this site because it's one of the first things you see when you're entering Listowel. In other words, on our downtown gateway, there was a large blank wall. The public art grant could be used to liven up this space. On the top right on this slide, there's a mural that has been recently installed in St. Jacobs. This mural was actually funded by a similar program by the St. Jacobs BIA, which is meant to support the village's tourism strategy. So by making opportunities for public art, North Perth can take a blank facade, such as the one on Vecchi's, and turn it into a bright and engaging space, such as the one in St. Jacobs that you see on the right. I think one of the important lessons from COVID is that when people are no longer present and active in the downtown, the space can begin to seem lifeless. The downtown needs to be engaging even during a time like COVID. People need to feel connected to these spaces, and by providing this grant and identifying certain priority sites, it can help take some of our unwelcome features and turn them into an opportunity. I'd like to finish up by reviewing some information on return on investment. Now, not every municipality has kept track of this information, but for the most part, there seems to be about a 3-to-1 return on investment. So that is, for every public dollar spent, it generates about $3 of private investment. So that is investment into the community, into paying local contractors, local suppliers, or local laborers. As mentioned, we are advising that we only offer a grant, but by all accounts, this grant money seems to be a great stimulus for the local economy. Not only will it help liven up our downtown communities, but it can help generate economic activity. So I've included a few figures here. On the left are figures for some of the lower tier municipalities. On the right are the figures for Elgin County. Now the program in Elgin County is much bigger. They offer a lot more services than just facade work. But again, you can see there, it's roughly a 3-to-1 return on investment. So we believe that that would be consistent in North Perth as well. Lastly, I'd like to return to some of the comments expressed by the business community in our survey, who showed excitement for the improvement of the downtown communities. Their insights suggest that improvement to the downtowns would increase participation and engagement in local commerce. While this form of return on investment may be more difficult to measure, insight from North Perth's private sector suggests that there may be a trickle-down effect from the facade program, which will encourage growth in our local economy. And at this time, I can open up for comments and questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Barrett. Very insightful report to council and quite colorful in its own way. I think the resolution that council is intending to consider asks that we bring forward feedback at a future meeting. So I think where we should probably start tonight is just questions. What questions members of council have? First comments, fine, but let's not draw them out because this there's more to come on this one. So I think a little bit of thoughtful reflection will be helpful, and a future meeting will help us consolidate our thoughtful reflection. So I invite councillors who have questions primarily Perhaps a few first comments, but keep them brief, to identify through the chat function at this time. Fairfields, do we have up first? Councillor Andreessen is first.
Hi, thank you through you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and thank you to Lee for the presentation. I really
Leanne, we're having a hard time hearing you. Your microphone seems like it's a bit wonky.
Okay, let's try this. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay, good. Hi, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and directed to Lee, and thank you for your presentation tonight. I know our business community will be very appreciative of this work. The question I have is just around the boundaries when I read the report. Of course, it is definitely focused on our downtown areas, and I appreciate that. Is there any consideration for a business that might not be directly in a downtown that might want to do some improvements? Just a question as it may come up at some point during this process. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a good question. Right now, we are relying on the boundaries defined by the Community Improvement Plan, since this program is associated with that. I think over time, there is room to either grow or I would add that with such applications, that would be up to the discretion of the committee. But I think right now we are just focusing on downtown Listowel, downtown Atwood, and downtown Moncton for this program.
Thank you.
Next is Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. And Lee, thanks again for your presentation. The question I have is goes back to our budget and the RED funding. Can you just inform, just remind us all the RED funding grant, how long that is for, and where did we come up in terms of our budget for this project? I think it's $80,000, and is it anticipated that that would be considered in a subsequent budget as well? Thank you.
Yeah, so as noted, I think the budget is for 80,000. In terms of RED funding, I think Kim may be able to address that a little bit more clearly than myself.
I will call on Ms. Couch to speak to that. Kim, did you want to join us and comment?
Certainly. Sure, thanks. So yes, that was submitted under the budget, the 2021 budget process. Rural Economic Development, that project does not fund the granting process. So although it was noted and has been approved under the 2021 process for both our matching portion for covering the development and implementation for the program, the funding for the grant itself and funds that would go to a business is not eligible under the RED funding program. So as of right now, the project has been approved by RED until I think it's the end of November of 2021. So we are hoping to have the two projects or the two plans complete and to run through an implementation of the plan in year one. So there would be the hope that council would find it valuable to continue beyond 2021. But for right now, that is what has been approved is for the 2021 and under this under the current the RED funding, but as well for the other funding under 2021 budget.
Thanks for the response, Kim and Lee. So further, my understanding is that the RED funding for 2021 basically paid for staff position for the most part, as well as some additional work in terms of what was undertaken for the survey and other background research. Is that correct? And is there any thought that we could apply for additional funding for 2022? Yes. Thank you.
No, it's 2021. Okay.
Clerk Bertfelds, do we have any others who wish to ask questions? Councillor Barnes is next.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Todd. I was just wondering if it was possible to get an actual future report with all of the 4 recommendations in it for council to consider. I noticed the motion tonight is simply to receive the report. And further to that, I was just wondering if there's going to be, it was mentioned in the motion that, you know, we will bring any feedback will be addressed for consideration at a subsequent meeting. I was just wondering, is the Economic Development Committee going to review what happens this year and perhaps bring back either, you know, continue doing it this way or recommendations for change? Is that something that you are considering? Thank you.
Thanks. Let me direct that to CAO Snell. I think that's where that question should be asked, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Yes, so tonight we really just wanted to, because the documents were so large and it is a very complex proposal for both facade improvement and the community development guidelines. We really just wanted to introduce the topic, heavily present all the background information. We can share the slide deck with council afterwards. But as well, it was to also give council time to go through both the documents thoroughly, digest them, and provide any feedback prior to us bringing them back for a council decision to be made. And yes, I think, although we haven't talked a lot about how we would do a follow-up, but certainly that may be something we can look at when we bring back a further presentation. But I would suggest that that's probably a very applicable avenue, is that we would take all suggestions and feedbacks through the Economic Development Committee to be presented to council, either through the budget process or at a council meeting.
Thanks, CAO Snell. Thanks, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Johnston is next. Councillor Johnston, are you with us? I'm not hearing you. The perils of web-based meetings. Councillor Johnston, are you with us? One last opportunity here. Okay, so perhaps he's lost audio out connectivity, because we're not hearing you, Councillor Johnston, but if we need to do a technical fix here, we should get our IT services involved, perhaps. The other option would be for him to call in on a dial-in line if he has one that's available to him. Do we have any other questions, Clerk Bertfelds? Okay, so at this point, we don't have any other questions other than Councillor Johnston's. I think what I'm hoping is that he can ask it a little bit later after Lee's next presentation, if that's all right. And why don't we turn the floor back over to Mr. Barrich to present the Downtown Community Design Guidelines. Mr. Barrich, the suggestion from IT was do a full screen share in your PowerPoint. Simon said F5 on the keyboard will help you with that.
Okay. Okay, so this is our presentation for the Downtown Commercial Design Guidelines. This presentation will begin with a review of our community survey for our design guidelines, which was conducted in January 2021. So with this in mind, I'll discuss the objectives and guiding principles as identified by survey respondents, a brief review of how respondents rank different design features in the design guidelines, a brief review of how respondents rank different a review of comments written by respondents, and a review of comments and responses provided by young adults ages 19 to 34. After reviewing the community survey, I will then discuss the design guidelines more specifically, focusing on the overall objectives and the document and its use and approach. So the first section of the community survey was concerned with defining some of the overall principles of the design guidelines. We presented respondents with a series of broad value statements and asked them to rank them from 1 to 5. 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree. This process allowed survey respondents to identify the vision of the design guidelines. The first statement we provided was as follows. Creating a more pedestrian-friendly atmosphere in the downtowns should be a priority in North Perth. This statement was intentionally broad, but is applicable to many different components in the final document. As this chart shows, respondents overall strongly agree that the downtown should be more pedestrian-oriented. And this will be made more clear further on in the presentation when I review some of the comments provided by survey respondents. North Perth's downtown has a solid selection of historical buildings. In many ways, these are an asset, but we wanted to get a better understanding of how the community valued some of these structures. So we provided the statement, the traditional heritage buildings in our downtowns are unique and we should do more to preserve, enhance, and celebrate them. There is a strong lean towards improving the quality of the historic buildings in our downtowns. This will inform our design guidelines, but will also be used for guidance when working with business owners who operate in these buildings who are applying for the facade program. At this time, we feel that almost any sort of improvement to these properties is a good improvement, but it's important for us to know how the community values the heritage and the historic nature of some of these downtown properties. The next 2 statements we provided were designed to understand how the community feels about change in the downtown communities. Because North Perth is growing, it's important to consider how this growth will affect the downtowns. We first offered the statement, we should make sure that as the municipality grows, our downtowns do not lose the characteristics that make them unique. In regards to this statement, respondents overwhelmingly agreed. Next, we stated, new and contemporary development should respect and complement the character of our downtowns. Again, the community feels that this is a priority. The results of these findings are relevant to the design guidelines and will reflect the recommendations within. But it's important in this document and moving forward to communicate to the public that it's possible to manage growth and change while also maintaining and enhancing the characteristics of our community as is. So this has been really valuable information for us. The next section of the survey asked respondents to review and rank different design elements. So I won't go over every section in detail, but I will discuss the method we use for analyzing these responses. For this purpose, I will just focus on the section in our design guidelines focused on awnings. So what we did was provide a variety of images to survey respondents. So for example, for awnings, we provided 7 different images that depict different styles of design. Respondents then had the opportunity to rank each one of these images from 1 to 4, 1 being least favorable and 4 being most favorable. The results were then organized into a chart just like this. This gave us a very good illustration of which design elements were most desirable in our downtown communities. What I did next was take these results, take these figures and enter them into an Excel spreadsheet. So after entering these into Excel, I was able to calculate the average score of each image, which then provided us with a score out of 4. This process allowed us to quantify the responses from survey respondents. This has helped guide the design guidelines. So as you can see in this slide, these are the images that scored highest in the survey. and these are the images that scored lowest. So this process was really effective in capturing what sort of design features should be prioritized in the downtowns and what sort of design should be avoided. And this process was very much grounded in what the priorities were to community members. Now, if you've read the document, you'll notice that many of these pictures can be found within the design guidelines because they've been really important in our decision-making process. So I just showed you the process for awnings, but we did the same, we applied the same analysis to other components of the design guidelines, such as signage, storefront design, building design, and public art. The results of this process have offered a really great vision for the details within the design guidelines. At the end of the survey, we gave respondents an opportunity to provide written responses. We asked 2 questions, both of which gave us a lot of insight. So what I'll do here is first read some of the more detailed answers in order to capture some of the opinions and attitudes expressed in the survey. After reviewing these comments, I will review some of the key themes that came out of these comments. To do so, I have quantified these comments in order to illustrate how often certain themes have emerged. First question we asked was, what are 3 things you like about the current state of our downtowns? And here's a few responses for you. The clock tower, library flowers, and boutique shops like Impressions. That is the place I want to show my friends visiting. Listowel has a few lovely murals and alleyways that add to the artistic feel. I love the planter boxes and hanging baskets in the summer too. The Listowel Public Library is a perfect blend of old and new. I wish more buildings could adopt this style, especially with the green space and parking. The buildings that have kept their heritage. Parisian shops come to mind. Clock tower, library, the walkway between Peter Pitt and Impression. And of course, the oldest movie theater in Canada is great. I love the small town personality of that theater, so I hope it can keep going. So I'm gonna go over a high-level analysis of these written responses. So we had 120 responses to this question. So rather than read every single one, what I have done here is kept a tally of how often certain items have been mentioned in the comments. So we asked, what are 3 things you like about the current state of the downtowns? The historic buildings were mentioned 44 times. The Listowel Clock Tower was mentioned 31 times. The original library, or the green space in front of the library, were mentioned 29 times. And the cenotaph by the clock tower was mentioned 13 times. There were other items mentioned, but these are the ones that were mentioned most often. So I think it's important to note here that these responses seem to really value the landmarks in the downtown that provide a story for community members to engage with. These stories offer a sense of continuity and they help create a sense of place. The next question we asked was, what are 3 things you would like to see improved in North Perth's downtowns? And here are a few responses. A decent restaurant that you could take friends from out of town to, and they would actually be impressed by the meal and atmosphere. More seats if someone wanted to sit after they're walking after browsing shops. There is only so much general shopping downtown. That is the movie theater, banks, real estate, insurance, paint store. They are specific to a need and not a store to be a tourist in. The unique stores create tourists. We do have some clothing and shoe stores downtown that do assist with general shopping. Restaurants create people that come downtown. We love outdoor areas to eat, drink with night lighting, music playing outside, but same throughout downtown. Similar to the discussion above, I kept a tally of how often certain features were noted in the comments. So for this question, I have divided the comments into 2 different charts. The first chart, this one here, focuses on the built environment in the downtown, and the second chart will focus on the pedestrian experience in the downtown. For the built environment, in terms of what can be improved in the downtown, The need for storefronts was mentioned 38 times. The need to improve storefronts was mentioned 38 times. The need for a truck bypass or for traffic management in the downtown was mentioned 32 times. And improved parking conditions was mentioned 16 times. When it comes to improvements in the downtown that may enhance the pedestrian experience, the top 3 responses were better shopping and dining experiences, which was mentioned 26 times, improved sidewalks and crosswalks, which was mentioned 22 times, and more downtown seating and furniture, which was mentioned 18 times. So some of these are outside of the scope of our design guidelines, but it further illustrates that the desire for the downtowns to become more pedestrian oriented. For example, there were many respondents who indicated that they wish that there were more places to sit downtown, either to go for a coffee or to sit after shopping. Our downtown design guidelines do not address this directly. However, this interest expressed by community members aligns with the goals of our facade program, which are aiming to bring more activity to the downtown and for it to become more of a place of leisure and of commercial activity. Next, I'm going to briefly review some of the responses from young adults who participated in the survey. When we launched the survey in January, we provided a question that asked survey respondents to provide their age. I was then able to go through the survey and pull this data for further analysis. The reason we pulled these results is because the Facade Improvement Program and the design guidelines are both great tools to help address our youth retention and attraction strategy, as they can help transform the downtowns into desirable locations that offer great amenities for that demographic. I will briefly review some of the comments offered in the survey, as well as the results from some phone interviews that I conducted with these survey respondents. First, the question, what are 3 things you like about the current state of our downtowns? Here are some of the responses. The Listowel Library is my favorite building in Listowel. The clock tower is nice too. The clock tower, alleys with artwork, the old Royal Hotel signage, the emergence of modern businesses, impressions, holy guacamole, and green cloud. The clock tower, library, and square out front of Giant Tiger. Sounds weird, but having a grocery store or department store is a huge bonus to creating a livable downtown. The clock tower and memorials surrounding it, and the municipal building. The storefronts along Main Street and murals at Dynafit. The next question, what are 3 things you would like to see improved in North Perth's downtowns? Needed repairs made to the old infrastructure, along with the revamp of living spaces and apartments in the downtown core. Myself and others don't feel safest being downtown, despite this being a small town. The alleyway beside Lake Fitness needs some updating and cleaning up. The chip truck outside the new convenience store is a terrible eyesore and seems to be in such an unsafe spot. The upper floors of some of the downtown could really use some TLC. Obviously, the downtown needs a facelift. Listowel is growing. We need better artwork, the continuation of more modern businesses opening up. Better greenery or landscaping would be an improvement too. Stratford's downtown could serve as a great example and inspiration. Thank you for putting the survey out to the public. Atwood needs to address the closed store beside the cafe. Moncton unfortunately looks terrible, full of buildings that look unused. Listowel needs to paint or maintain the trim of Memory Lane. After pulling these results, I managed to connect with some of the respondents for phone interviews. This was a great opportunity to learn more about how they would like to see the downtown progress and what features are meaningful to them. These were semi-structured interviews, meaning I developed some questions, but allowed the conversations to go where needed. I provided a few of the questions here, so you can get a better idea of the sort of information we were interested in gathering. If you had friends or family visiting from outside of the municipality, where in the downtowns would you take them? Do you ever go to the downtowns on weekends for leisure, Why or why not? What would encourage you to spend more leisure time in the downtowns? As the community grows, what features of the downtown should be enhanced and what features of the downtown should be improved? I had the opportunity to connect with 5 survey respondents. So while this is a very small sample group, some of the answers were very interesting and very informative. All of the participants indicated that they feel that the downtowns in North Perth right now are simply just a place to pass through. Some noted that it seemed like North Perth is just a place en route to go skiing or to go up to the lake. The participants all felt that the downtowns should aim to become more of a destination instead. The participants explained that if they do spend leisure time in the downtowns, it's usually to dine. That being said, they feel that there should be more variety of dining options. The participants felt that we should do more to try and attract places like Holy Guacamole or Impressions. All of the participants agreed that these were great locations. And there was also an interest among the survey participants for more patio space and outdoor dining. I had the opportunity to speak with parents of a young family. They indicated that they often spend leisure time in downtown Listowel. They will often walk as a family into town and usually stop by Impressions to get treats for their kids. But they felt that one thing in the downtown that is lacking is green space, or space to sit and enjoy their food. The parents mentioned that they sometimes visit the playground by the Listowel Library, but that it could really use some TLC. I mentioned this story and some of the others because I think it illustrates that there's an interest among the younger residents in North Perth to participate in the downtown communities, but that there is some opportunity for us to improve some of those features. I'm just going to briefly conclude some of the results from our community survey. So what we can conclude from the engagement process is that residents in North Perth want to see our downtowns become more of a destination. That is, not just a place to pass through, or not just a place to pass through, but a place where you'd like to spend time. A place to window shop, sit and enjoy a coffee, and a place to take your friends from out of town. There's a strong interest to see our downtowns become more pedestrian oriented, and these findings have been considered in the development of our downtown design guidelines. So this is where the concept of Main Street comes in. So Main Street traditionally provides space and opportunity for commercial activity. This includes boutique shops, essential services, cultural services, among others. But Main Streets also tend to be more pedestrian oriented. So I should note that the notion of Main Street design is consistent with several design guidelines across Ontario. So the application of this idea in North Perth is quite consistent with best practices. Further, the idea of Main Street and its contribution to economic development is outlined in the provincial policy statement, which I think offers a really good outline and guide for our project here. And lastly, we have the difficult task of working with 3 different downtown communities. The Main Street approach offers an overarching guide that simultaneously allows for each downtown community to vary and develop its own unique characteristics. Not only this, Listowel, Atwood, and Moncton each have a successful history of Main Street activity. They were places of industry and community. So in the document, I do focus on this history briefly in order to illustrate that each of these communities was built in the traditional Main Street character. That is, they were destinations and not just places to pass through. So to be clear, my focus on this component in the design guidelines is not necessarily to focus on history or heritage, but to illustrate that the Main Street principles in North Perth can help create a sense of place. And this aligns with the responses that we have seen in the community survey. By focusing on this principle, we can allow the downtowns to experience growth while remaining true to the features that make them unique in the first place. And lastly, just to review the use and application of this document, Developers will rely on it when submitting applications for our downtown communities. Business owners and property owners in the downtown applying for the facade program will have to rely on this document, and it will be used by municipal staff when reviewing applications for the facade program or development applications in the downtown. And at this time, I'll open it up for questions or comments.
Thanks, Mr. Barrich. Council, again, I think the same principles apply here to our discussion at this point. We will bring back opportunities for input and critique and suggestions and improvements at a future council meeting if we go ahead with the resolution that we have, that is. So at this time, I'm inviting questions primarily, although first comments are certainly welcome. Fairfields, do we have anything on the speaker list at this point? We're not seeing anyone, but perhaps it's the state of the mind can only absorb what the seat can at this point. So, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thanks again for the presentation, Lee. 2 points I just want to hear more from you about is you mentioned both in the facade improvement as well as in the downtown design guidelines is about the upper stories of buildings and the question or comment made about residential in those areas above. Are there any programs that you have in mind in talking with building departments and fire departments regarding how we can encourage and support use of those upper stories? This was an issue that the Affordable Housing Committee of the Mayor's Task Force was looking at as well.
So I think that's something we can look into further. I think in terms of the facade program, encouraging the replacement of windows or improving the condition of those boarded up windows is really the first thing that we can address. But I'm not sure if this is, or I guess we can look into it further, how this program can align with the affordable housing strategy for North Perth.
Thank you. My second question deals with a comment there was in the your second report dealt with a municipal sidewalk patio bylaw. Do we actually have such a thing, and what does that actually include?
Yeah, we do have one, and so I mentioned that in the guidelines. I don't have it on hand right now, but I think it's just pretty comprehensive to provide guidelines for the installation, particularly in Listowel, I believe, not necessarily for Atwood or Moncton. But yeah, I can look into that further.
And my last point deals specifically with dealing with our areas in our downtowns, all 3 that have provincial highway, and specifically, I guess, Atwood and Moncton that progress through them. Have we had discussions, or have you had discussions with the Minister of Transportation regarding the proposal? Thank you.
No, I haven't, but I can look into that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Clerk Bearfelds is telling me that she will organize to send out to council a copy of the bylaw with regards to sidewalks and patios, that sort of thing, in the morning tomorrow. I assume it's also on the website if people, the public, want to access it. So, a good point. We need to understand that, and perhaps that needs to be reviewed in the context of this project moving forward. So, thank you for that one. Any other questions or first comments at this point? Clerk Bearfelds, are we seeing anyone on the speakers list? Okay. Okay, thank you, Council. And Mr. Barrich, thank you for an enormous amount of work. The process that you described has really impressed me. I think that we've gotten through your process a lot of community input, a lot of business input, and I certainly appreciate the fact that that was so comprehensive in that context. So thank you very much for your services so far. We look forward to more. I guess I'm going to echo Councillor Rothwell's comments that the Mayor's Task Force did talk about trying to sort of recoup some of the upper stories of downtown buildings for apartment and residential use. And that would be an interesting thing for you to poke your nose into, since you seem so good at research and bringing up to some of the best practices that could be of assistance in the community. Council, I have a resolution for our consideration. As I described at the front end of this, it suggests that we have a subsequent meeting, and perhaps the CEO could describe some process in terms of input from council at this point. Chris, do you have anything in mind in particular about how council would give more detailed input into the documents that we've had described to us tonight and the presentations that we've had?
What I can suggest is when Lee sends the PowerPoint presentation out to all members of council, he can include, you'll have his email address, and you can certainly respond to any of the documents through Lee's address. And if you wanted to copy Kim and myself on it, that'd be great as well. And then we can suggest bringing something back to council, maybe the second meeting in May, for future consideration.
Sounds quite feasible. Perhaps we can encourage as well in the public domain that if citizens who watch this presentation and wish to make comment want to do so, that they can approach their local councillor to give their thoughts on anything that's come up. Councillor Rothwell, I see you have a question before resolution.
Yes, thanks very much, Mayor Todd. And not to go on too far, but just from timing perspective, just given CEO Snell's comment, and Lee's comments in terms of timing, if council is to move forward with both of these projects, would the first intake in fact be this coming June of 2021? Is that correct? Thank you.
Now, certainly, certainly, and certainly this is something that we'd hope that we could at least have a first intake during 21. Now, the exact timing of that may get backed up a little bit depending on when and if council approves the project. But certainly that would be our hope, that we would have an early summer first intake if possible.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, so I have a resolution, council, for consideration at this point. You've heard a lot about it by now. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the Facade Improvement Project presentation and the Downtown Commercial Design Guidelines presentation dated April 19th, 2021 for information, and that any further feedback received will be addressed for consideration and approval at a subsequent council meeting. Can I call on Councillor Seiler to be our mover for that one?
I will move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you serve as the seconder?
Yes, I'd be happy to second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate on the motion? We're setting ourselves on a course that will have another opportunity for council to dig in and give suggestions and see revisions in the near future. As long as everyone is understanding what we're voting on, then let's have that vote. That is carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Barrett, thank you for all that you've done so far. Delighted to have your presentations tonight and opportunity for councillors to consider how we move forward with this. We appreciate your work.
Great, thank you.
I think it's prudent at this time. Maybe we'll call a 10-minute health break, a little recess in our meeting. Let's have people come back at 9:15 for continuation of the meeting. Thank you, councillors, for the short break. We invite you back to the table. If you are able, at this time, we're going to move forward with the balance of our agenda for the meeting. Next up is item 5.2, reports from the Clerk's Department. And let's begin with item 5.2.1. In this, council is invited to remove a holding symbol which is kept in place on planning applications to ensure compliance with conditions established by the council for properties described as Westwood Estates in Listowel. I'm going to call, I think, on North Perth planner, Mr. Sean Yilmaz, for his comments. Mr. Yilmaz.
Hi, thank you, and good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg, members of council. The application for a zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted in order to remove the holding provision on the subject lands and ultimately allow the construction of 40 single detached dwellings. The majority of the blocks are within the residential 3 zone, with block 72 in the residential 5 zone. A holding provision was applied to several of the blocks of the recently approved plan of subdivision 44M-74, also known as the Nickel Property Subdivision. This includes the subject lands, which are also known as Phase 3 of the development. The subject lands are within the Special Policy Area E designation of the County of Perth official plan. This designation permits a variety of residential uses. The holding provision, identified as -H2, effectively requires evidence that all financial and servicing requirements for the proposed development have been met. These were placed on the property to ensure appropriate financial securities were posted with the municipality. Staff confirms that these requirements have been met for the proposed development. The development also conforms to the policies of the County of Perth official plan and North Perth zoning bylaw. As such, it is staff's recommendation that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the removal of a holding symbol. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Yilmaz. Councillors, any questions or first comments on this matter? We're not seeing anything at this end. So we have 2 items of business here. We have a resolution and a bylaw. The first, let's deal with the first, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the removal of a holding symbol -H affecting property described as part of Block 71, Blocks 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, and 77 of Registered Plan 44M-74, Twomley Street West, Winchester Avenue South, Hood Street West, Listowel, Elma Ward, in the municipality of North Perth, as the conditions for removal have been met. Councillor Anstead, can I call on you to be our mover?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Behrens, will you second that?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And now, Council, the bylaw. That bylaw number 35-2021, being a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. That the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you do the honors of seconding that one?
I sure will second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate there? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you. Next up then, we see another planning request related to the same Westwood Estates development in Listowel. For this one, council is asked to exempt the fabric from part lot control. This action will allow the applicant to create several individual lots of record in this area I again call on Mr. Yilmaz for comments. Welcome again, Sean.
Yes, thank you. So yes, the same applicant as the previous file is seeking approval from North Perth Council to pass a bylaw which will effectively exempt the subject lands from the part lot control provisions of the Ontario Planning Act. If exempted, the applicant will be permitted to establish several individual lots of record on 5 lotless blocks of the registered plan 44M74. The applicant is requesting an exemption from the part lot control provisions to establish 40 conveyable parcels over the 5 blocks, with each lot proposed to contain a single detached dwelling. Each lot has appropriate public road frontage and lot area as required in the residential 3 zone, and each lot will have individual service connections. The subject lands are within the residential 3 zone of the North Perth zoning bylaw. This zone does permit low density residential uses, including single detached dwellings. Section 57 of the Planning Act provides that the council of a local municipality may, by bylaw, provide that the part lot control provisions of Section 55 of the Planning Act do not apply to lands within such plan of subdivision. As such, the removal of part lot control to establish lot lines on lotless blocks is an accepted method of lot creation under the Planning Act. As such, it is staff's recommendation that the council of the municipality approve the application by Westwood Estates for the exemption of part lot control on lands described as blocks 73, 74, 75, 76, and 77. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Yilmaz. Council, any questions or first comments on this matter? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Sean, for your report. I had asked Sean some questions earlier here today regarding the densities which were originally proposed within these lotless blocks. And I would say it's a little unusual that we have lotless blocks for single detached dwellings. Normally, the lots for those single detached dwellings would have been on the final approved plan of subdivision, and only where we would have semis or townhouses and so on would we still have lotless blocks on a final plan. Nevertheless, I am concerned regarding the relatively low density and numbers within these blocks, irrespective of the fact that singles are permitted. It is within a range, and I find, as I said earlier here today regarding affordable housing, we had spoken specifically about this being an issue, and I just don't see it addressed in the report that we had presented, and as to whether or not there was discussion that the applicant had with respect to the number of lots that are being proposed here. Thank you.
Mr. Yilmaz, did you want to respond to any aspect of that?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the earlier question, Councillor Rothwell. So essentially, I haven't really used part lot control exemption for single detached dwellings. However, it is my understanding that this is becoming a little bit more commonplace. I know that in the Waterloo region, it's used quite a bit on these lotless blocks. But with regards to the review of this proposal, essentially they were proposing 40 units, 40 lots, which were consistent with the lot pattern of phase 1 and phase 2 for the most part. The subdivision, the draft approved subdivision was with the understanding that there would be between 99 and 132 low density residential dwellings within the development. And with these 40 units, my understanding is that it would bring this up to 109. So it is, I guess, when you want to cut the middle in half, it is on the lower side. However, it is 10 units above, or 10 lots above what was on the low scale of this.
Thank you, Sean. My last subsequent deals specifically with Block 72 and part of Block 71, which are not included in the part lot control bylaw, but were included in the bylaw we just adopted regarding the lifting of the holding zone. Can you tell us, or perhaps the applicant can tell us, in terms of what their process will be in terms of, are they going to apply for part lot control for blocks 71 and 72 as well for the proposed townhouses? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I would probably default to the applicant as we do not have anything submitted at this time for that.
Hi.
Mr. Yule.
I'm Kate Wilczek here on behalf of the applicant. I'm with MHBC, so I can answer that question for you. These two blocks are proposed as townhouses, and it's my understanding that they're to be built by others. So they will be built out eventually, but at this time, the application is strictly for the single detached units.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Yilmaz, this has kind of raised a little bit of a red flag for me. I'm just not sure I understood your previous response, so I'll ask this. I recall when some of these matters came before council, including the plan of subdivision, that we've seen at least 2 plans of subdivision here in my 10 years, Mayor. And one of the concerns last time that was expressed was the density. There were some difficulties. Council put up a little bit of concern about the densities, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, that have the densities that we expected in the plan of subdivision been somehow reduced as a consequence of this action?
No, they have not. It is within the density range. So what was approved was between 99 and 132 lots for single or semi-detached dwellings, and I believe they have 109 in total. So it was between 99 and 132, and now that we're towards the end of the development, my calculation is that there's a 109. Some of the discussions before that were revolving around this actually led to the locking in of the 4-story multi-unit buildings that are being built currently. That was something that I know council really pushed for to make sure that the density was appropriate for this development. And as we can see, both those buildings, I believe, are almost, or at least the first one's almost complete.
I just wanted to check my assumptions because I wasn't quite sure I understood the plan of subdivision versus this, and whether there was some discrepancy that was worth worrying about. So thank you for your assurance on that. Any other questions from council? Okay, I have a resolution for consideration on this matter, that bylaw number 42-2021, being a bylaw to exempt from part lot control, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would so move.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, would you serve as our seconder?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate further? We see anything, Clerk Brefels? Nope. Okay, let's have that vote then. And that is carried. Thank you. Our e-scribe seems to be slowing down a little bit. I don't know what to make of that yet. It's getting tired. Maybe it's a reflection or a signal. Maybe the software is a signal. Okay. Next up then is item 5.2.3. Council, thank you, Mr. Yilmaz. Council is asked to correct a road naming matter in Listowel to create conformity with our road naming conventions. I am advised by the clerk that if there are questions, they'll be happy to answer them, but this is a fairly routine matter of housekeeping. Anyone have questions or comments on this matter? All right, I'll read the resolution into the record that bylaw number 38-2021, being a bylaw to rename a highway, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for that.
Also move, yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Well, every day you get to attach the word south to a street name. Yes. Any discussion or debate? All right, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. My vote didn't come up as Councillor Rothwell here.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Rothwell. And with that, that's carried. All right, let's go next to item 5.3. I think we got through all the planning stuff now. Item 5.3, reports from the programs department. We have no report that's been submitted, but if there are any questions, I think we had Ms. Kango with us. So if anyone has any questions, just let me quickly know here and we can pose them. We've been busy again with the pandemic adjustments. Okay, thank you. Next, then item 5.4, reports from the Treasury and the Finance Department. As item 5.4.1, Finance staff has brought forward for council review of accounts as of this day, April 19th, 2021. I'll note, as usual, that some councillors have declared a potential pecuniary interest in this item and will absent themselves from consideration and voting. Are there any questions about this matter for staff? Seeing none, let's have the resolution for our consideration that the following summary of accounts be received by council for information. The total at the bottom line is $859,353.77. And I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover for that.
Yes, I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anstett, will you second that?
I unfortunately have a conflict, Mayor Kasenberg.
Oh, thank you. See, I still, how many years in now? I don't know. Councillor Duncan, let's go to Councillor Duncan. Will you be our seconder?
Yes, I can second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Let's have that vote. Aye. And that is carried. Thank you. For item 5.5, Manager of Environmental Services, we don't have a report there tonight. They continue to do their good work in our community. That brings us to item 5.6. I see that Mr. Couch has lined up a whole bunch of drains for us tonight, amongst other things. Thank you for that. So let's deal with item 5.6.1. As item 5.6.1, council was invited to appoint Street Associates Limited as consultant engineers to consider the improvement of the Burnett Municipal Drain. I don't know if this warrants comment or... Okay, so Mr. Richardson, our drainage consultant, is available if we have questions. Does anyone have questions on this matter? Okay, seeing none, let's consider the resolution then that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, in accordance with Section 78 of the Drainage Act, appoints Street Associates Limited to investigate the possible improvements to the Burnett Municipal Drain. Councillor Anstett, can I call on you to be a mover here?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Behrens, I don't think you had a conflict here. Can I call on you to be the seconder?
Yes, I will second that. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Any discussion or debate on this one? Okay, let's have that vote. And And that is carried. Thank you. Noting Councillor Johnston's abstention here. Then next up is item 5.6.2. Council here is invited to appoint GM Blue Plan as consultant engineers to consider the improvement of the Hood number 1 municipal drain. Again, I don't, if there are questions, we can direct them to Mr. Couch, but if not, we can proceed directly to consideration of the resolution. Any questions, Council? Okay, seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, in accordance with Section 78 of the Drainage Act, appoints GM Blue Plan to investigate the possible improvements to Hood number 1 municipal drain. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for that?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Callum, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion or debate on this one? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Item 5.6.3. Council is invited to proceed with the petition and request for improvements to the Perth municipal drain. That's smirking in the chambers. I want it known. Council, any questions or comments on this matter before we consider the resolution? We're not seeing any, so let's consider the resolution before us that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, in accordance with Section 4 and 78 of the Drainage Act, proceed with the petition and the request for improvement of the Perth municipal drain. And I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for that.
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, will you serve as seconder?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And we're missing one.
Mayor Kasenberg, it's probably me. I cannot vote. I declared a conflict.
Thank you, Councillor Barron. So that we'll call that carried. There we go. I still have things to learn on that front, don't I? Thank you. And next we have item 5.6.4. Council is invited to proceed with the petition and request for improvements to the Bartman municipal drain. Council, any questions on this matter? All right, seeing none, let's have the resolution that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth amend. No, that's not it. Sorry, jumped ahead, too far. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, in accordance with Section 4 of the Drainage Act, proceed with the petition for the Bartman municipal drain. We're on the right one. Yeah, we're on the right one. Okay. Councillor Rothwell, can I call on you to be a mover?
I so move.
Thank you. Councillor Seiler, will you second that one?
I'll second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you. Next up then is item 5.6.5, which I was rushing to on the last item. I don't know. Council is provided with a report from the Manager of Operations pertaining to the implementation of a no stopping zone on Reserve Avenue near the Eastdale Public School. The intent is to reduce traffic congestion in this block. I'm going to call on our Manager of Operations, Mr. Couch, for a few comments on this one. Mr. Couch.
Thank you. There's been ongoing discussion with the school since the start of the new year. We reconstructed the block in front of the school for better drop-off areas and better traffic flow. However, the school is experiencing significant growth, with significant growth happening in the next 2 years as well in their projections. They are having parking issues and traffic congestion problems out in front of the school, but as well as behind the school. So the recommendation in front of you is regarding a no park zone on Reserve behind the school, Eastdale Public, and converting it to a no stop zone, which should prevent what is ongoing stopping in that area and alleviate some of the problems with traffic congestion behind the school. And as the report indicates, we're looking for, you know, full running school systems again for trialing other options, and they would include a one-way block potentially on the front of the school, but I'll bring another recommendation and report forward as we work through this and COVID and the schools stopping and starting for busyness, because we'd like to trial some of these items when we're back in full swing. So for consideration tonight is the change in the traffic bylaw to reduce or to change from no parking to no stopping on the block of reserve.
Thanks, Mr. Couch. Council, any questions or first comments on this matter? Fairfields, anyone? Okay, so I have a resolution for our consideration then that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth amend no stopping zone Schedule B of Traffic Bylaw 78-2006 to include both sides of Reserve Avenue South from John Rosa Street East to Clayton Street East, and remove the no parking designation from this block from Schedule A of the Traffic Bylaw. Can I call on Councillor Andreessen to be our mover here?
Yes, I'm happy to move that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Anstead, will you serve as the seconder?
Yes, I would second that. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you. And then we have item 5.6.6. Here, Council is provided with a report from Manager of Operations Lyndon Couch pertaining to the outcomes and proposed actions moving forward of the Winter Maintenance Modernization Project. This was a project undertaken through grant funding from Ontario by the County of Perth, its member municipalities, and the town of St. Mary's. I'm going to ask Mr. Couch for some comments on this one because it's an interesting project with a bit of scope. So, Mr. Couch, please.
Okay, thank you. Really, in front of you are three reports: a very large report done by CIMA Consulting, secured by the county as discussed. It was attached, and I apologize for the length of it, but there was a lot of background data and information and research that was shown in the report as well. The condensed version in the report that was brought in front of County Council, so some of you may have seen it, and it recognized basically that existing procedures and practices and facilities and fleets were in general good repair and in good operation. There were no sweeping recommendations to make short-term changes other than the ones that are in front of you tonight. And we're really only receiving the report. If there's other action items, there'll be subsequent reports coming forward. But Pat's put in front of you the priority 1 goals, and I simply will list them as you've seen in the other 2 reports. Really, the ability to harmonize our winter operations plans. We're supposed to have formal operation plans in place, and we do have policy in place and procedures in place, but to nest that into what is called an operations plan is a recommendation for all the lower tier and county groups as well, road groups. Harmonizing the road salt management plans, also recommended. North Perth currently does not have a road salt management plan. It's listed as a hazardous or toxic substance by the federal government, and the management of the salt should be indicated in the plan and reported on. So we're looking forward to working with the other governments to put those plans forward as well. Weather monitoring is currently done on paper. These are examples of research items that were found through the report, and we're looking at conducting those in a digital fashion and probably sharing that software platform with our partners. Finally, patrolling and AVL work that is done through automatic vehicle location, the AVL GPS systems. We'd like to share those platforms, share the technology, and probably get a competitive bid from another firm that would provide for our entire fleets. We hope to see some cost effectiveness in doing so, and that's recommended here as well. Those are all year 1 goals. There are year 2 goals that stem out of these. They're all included in the other reports as well. And I would just leave it really at that. If there's questions specifically on the report, I may be able to answer them in general, but can get back with more information in terms of what's in front of you here today. No real financial impacts in terms of making these changes. If there were in 2021, they would come forward as an operational change and recommendation.
Thanks, Mr. Couch. I think Councillor Behrens has a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Lyndon, I realize that you maybe can't answer this, but and perhaps I missed it in the reports, but Perth County never considered the location of maintenance buildings dependent on whether they did their entire road system or not. Because right now, and we felt it here too in North Perth, that having contract plows for winter maintenance and that is fine, except if you don't have anyone bidding on the tenders and you're kind of run a bit short on not having enough trucks. And maybe at some point it will happen that they need to take a look at doing their own roads again. And I know we do a little bit of contracting as well, but do you think that that would change where the recommended locations are for the works yards? That's my question.
Yep, thank you. The report did touch on facility locations and it did evaluate based on the actual physical condition of the buildings and made some recommendations as to reducing the amount of facilities that we do have. So it was some research that was done and there were some recommendations on the removal of some shops and the ultimate number of them. That was not considered an action item in year one, but to be considered in the future. And that is in front of us in the report. And we'll look to the group really of public work leads to probably bring that forward in subsequent years. But it is a portion of the report. Again, it would need more study. But you're absolutely right. We had also asked, but there wasn't capacity in this study to look at the amount of contracting versus own troops or forces to do the work, but it is something that we need to look at. It was considered a problem in the beginning of the investigation, and it still is something that we want to focus on because we may just see an evaporation of available contractors. Right now, we still do have 2 to 3 in North Perth and expect them to continue over the next year to 2 years.
Thanks, Mr. Couch. I remember actually asking questions at County Council for Councillor Barron's benefit going back at least a year ago, probably more, with regards to optimizing contracting versus plowing operations, winter maintenance operations. And at the time, I was certainly assured that from their perspective, in terms of cost effectiveness, that they had the optimal number of routes that were being contracted. I don't know if that is information useful to you, Councillor Barnes, but that's what I remember being told very clearly at the time. And so it sounds like there may need to be at least some work done to bring proof to the table about some of that. But I look forward to seeing that move forward too. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I have a resolution for consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the Winter Modernization Project Review Report for information. Councillor Barnes, can I call on you to be mover for that one?
Certainly, thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Duncan, will you serve as our seconder for that one?
Yes, I can second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and thanks for the report, Lyndon. My question is this, since this is a winter modernization project, was the issue of hours of operation on the busiest roads within Perth County and specifically Perth Line 86 in particular discussed at all in terms of plow routes timing and as to whether or not we're going to go to a 24-hour operation on some of our busiest roads, or was that outside of the scope of this project? Thank you.
From my understanding, the route optimization portion of this study, which was lengthy and detailed in terms of modeling our routing and stating whether our existing fleet and the route it took was efficient, showed that it was efficient almost for every route. And also the way that the fleet had been dispersed in the various municipalities was in general well positioned and did not they did not see any efficiencies that could be brought forward other than really the methods that we're using. In terms of what you're asking about hours of work and workforce deployment for the upper tier roads, no, I do not recall that as being specifically looked at. More if for the future as well, if we were to combine our efforts, if we were to take some roads, they were to take some roads in different jurisdictions and municipalities, and that's very much the year 2, year 3 goals of looking at that kind of sharing. But to answer your question, you have to go back to probably my my peer at the county to ask, you know, where that would be headed, but it wasn't a specific target that I recall in the report, no.
I appreciate your comments on that, Lyndon. My encouragement would be to pick up on what you said in terms of additional collaboration, to use that word, I guess, or my word, and looking at that issue in terms of when our roads are becoming more busy than they previously were, and as to whether or not we need on some of our roads to really look at when we are dealing with our timing of our plow routes starting and ending. Thanks very much. I suspect we'll have plenty more conversation in the coming time about that.
Thanks. Any other questions, discussion, debate at this point? It's been duly moved and seconded that we receive this report for information. Let's have the vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Couch, for bearing with us. We did get to your work. Next up, we have no reports tonight from the fire department as item 5.7. That brings us to item 6 on our agenda. Councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or our committees? Again, usual method, use the chat function if you'd like to draw the floor. Mr. Barnes?
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. I'm not actually requesting reports, just requesting how the drainage reports are done. As many, when we're talking about drainage, for the most part, it's all, or a good portion of it is on farmland. The concern that I have is on 2 of the reports, we did get mapping, so we knew exactly where the drain was, but on 2 of the reports, we did not. And it's very difficult, especially as Councillor Johnson has suggested many times, that, you know, if people are corporation directors in a corporation, we need to know as councillors so that we can declare a conflict, like narrow it down at least to the, you know, the ward or whatever. But if we could get maps for all of the a simple map, like the last 2 had maps, that was easy to read. We could figure it out. But, you know, if you can't get give us a list of the people on the drain, which would be the nicest, at least give us a map for every drainage project coming forward, so that, because quite frankly, I thought the Burnett was in Wallace. I didn't know it was in Elma. So there you go. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm seeing a note from Mr. Couch, and I'm seeing Ms. Bearfeld's nod her head. So I think your wish is to command.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Kellum next.
Yes, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and I guess I'll direct this to CAO Snell. I just prior to the meeting tonight, excuse me, I had a phone call asking if the Elma landfill dump was closed. I first said I don't. It's essential, so I don't think you should be going. But I said I would ask tonight and get back.
So the Elma landfill site would have been closed today because it's Monday, but it is open on its regular hours, and that information is all available on our website under COVID updates. But it is currently operating as normal with the COVID protocols in place.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else have requests for reports or even a little insight? We're not seeing anything, so we're going to move forward. We've received no items of correspondence beyond any that was already shared for council's disposition. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda, which allows council to consider and enact bylaws. We have no additional bylaws besides the confirmatory, which lies ahead under its own section for our consideration tonight. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion this evening? We're not seeing any, so that brings us to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Again, if you'd like to speak, indicate in the chat window and we'll work from the list. We're not seeing anything. That brings us to agenda item number 11. We have one matter before us to be considered in a closed session meeting of council. I will now read the resolution that both explains and enables our action to enter closed session. The resolution is as follows: that this committee proceed in camera at 9:56 p.m. to address a matter pertaining to the receiving of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose regarding professional services. Can I call on Deputy Mayor Kellum to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate, council, before we vote on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Okay, council, we are moving our open session to our closed. Give us a few moments. Simon has entered the chambers to help us with that transition. We should be back momentarily. Just please hold. Sorry, thank you. I'm hearing all the chirps here. Those who have not been invited to remain should exit at this time. We're just looking at this video with Simon, or the audio, sorry, with Simon at this point to make sure that we're not bleeding through onto YouTube. Simon, can you confirm that we are silenced on YouTube at this point? Hold on, he's just verifying. We're testing to see if audio is bleeding onto YouTube. Councillor Richardson thinks it is. So hold on, Council. Simon's going to make a few more revisions. Okay, we're just testing to see if the video is coming through on YouTube. It still is. Okay, so Council. it's delivering. Excellent. Thank you. So that concludes, we have concluded a closed session of council. We are back in open session for resolution. And at this time, with regards to item number 12 on our agenda, we have nothing to the community, which brings us to item 13 on our agenda. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I have a draft for the confirmatory bylaw. We need to change its number to 43-2021. And I'm going to read that into the record for our consideration that bylaw number 43-2021 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Seiler to be our mover for this one?
I will move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Are there any opposed? Please say opposed or no or something equally appropriate. And we're not hearing any voices. That's a good thing. So that is carried. Thank you. And then that brings us to our adjournment opportunity. Council, we have completed the deliberation and taken action on the business that was placed before us tonight. Before I read a motion to adjourn, is there any other further business to be raised? Seeing none, I have a motion for consideration. The council meeting adjourns at 10:49 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, April 26, 2021 at 7 p.m. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Behrens, will you be our seconder?
Certainly.
Thank you. And that's non-debatable. Are there any opposed? That is carried, Council. This meeting is adjourned until next Monday. Thank you for good work tonight, and I wish you a good rest. Take care.
Good night, all.